Hello and welcome to our update, our first update of 2025. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope we're giving you some information that you can use on your land purchase and construction in the Philippines. All right, well, as you can notice, Aini has decided to apply duct tape to her mouth. They say there's a million uses for duct tape in the house, and I think I just found the new one. So Aini and I were just watching our first video on the land purchase, and she said she interrupted so much that we decided the best thing to do was just use some duct tape and to solve the problem that way.
I was just kidding. But anyway, I was just doing that because I noticed myself that I was interrupting Barry a lot, and not only me, some people are noticed that too, that I was interrupting Barry a lot.
So anyway, we were just watching our first video, the land purchase video, and this was in last year in around April when we were completing I guess we were just still in the process of completing our land purchase, and we were just thinking, it's been such a long journey that we had, looking back to the time when we were just discovering these things on how to purchase land and what could go wrong and how we adjusted. And we just noticed that we came a long way since then, and time is going by. In April 2024, the last thing on my mind was, New Year of January 2025. And so we're glad that as time is passing, this is one of the reasons why we want to go and do this project, is because in 1 year, we feel like we've really come a long way and learned so much and been through so much. And we're glad we're doing that, because then we can point to a very exciting and productive year of 2024, and then
2025.
Looking forward to 2025. I wanted to tell you about this Palawan shirt. So this is a script, an ancient pre-colonial script of the indigenous people of Palawan, and I got this from the Palawan Museum. So if you're going, make sure you go to the museum and check out those artifacts over there. It's been 1 year, and we wanted to say that it's kind of funny, the process that we started, we were thinking, we'll be done with this design process in 2 months, right? What do you think, honey?
I'm kind of afraid to talk more now.
No,
because I'm interrupting a lot. But anyway, so we have a lot update for you guys. So
I just wanted to say that the time that was spent, it really was probably 2 months on our part when we decided to start a design, and we thought, we know from previous renovation that we did that pretty much what we wanted. It turned out perfectly over there, so we thought, we'll just apply a lot of those same principles, and we're actually doing that even to the design. But what you have to consider is, in spite of your architect being very responsive, they take away your plan for minimum like 2 weeks, but sometimes more, like they say 3 weeks, but they mean 1 month. So I would say that 60% of that design time, more than half, is just waiting for his team to do all the updates. So make sure that even if you're gung-ho and as soon as you get that plan back, that's, you're diving into double checking and everything, making modifications, it will be minimum double whatever the time you put in just for waiting time. And it's actually funny that we talk about waiting time now, because we're waiting for the building permit, right?
yes, so we started our architect processed our building permit like November 28th, 2024. So now, it's January 4th. So we are just been waiting for that, and then they have the city hall. Yep, that's where they apply for the building permit. That they get back like some comments, like small comments that you should do that, you should do that. They tell for the architect to fix some little thing about their comments, and then after all the comments, and then the architect will send it back to them. And that's where the stage that we're waiting for. And hopefully anytime soon, they will we'll approve your building permit, and then we can start construction. So that's what we are going to talk about here, about when really going to start the construction project for our house build.
Yeah, so the architect was crossing his fingers that we would get it before the final holiday time at the end of December. And so we thought it's likely to either come right before, the final
Christmas.
last 2 weeks of Christmas, or in early in the new year.
Yes.
So we're still expecting that. Of course, it's out of our hands. We have no idea, but it sounds
It's
like
Philippines, after all.
we figure he knows the kind of cadence and the schedule, so we're kind of trusting that he knows that stuff better than us. So fingers crossed we'll get that in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and also once we get approved for that, and then the city will tell the architect how much we are going to pay for the building permit. It depends how big your house, it depends what's the design and all of that stuff. So, and then they'll tell us how much, and then we'll send the money to the architect and pay for that. And then of course, payment for the architect too. And
That's right. There's the second payment, right?
Exactly.
Because these progress payments, there was one after the initial phase, after an initial delivery of a design, but then there's the second one is at the end of the design when you get the permit, right?
I think that's not the second one. This is our third one now.
Oh, the
Because
third
remember
one.
the third one, you're supposed to pay 50%.
Yeah,
Right?
it was a
50%.
deposit, right, at the beginning.
Yeah, at the beginning. And then so we paid for the beginning, and then the second and then the third one, it's the whole entire payment, including the building permit. So yeah, so that's what we are waiting for and getting ready to pay the architect and the city. And then now we are going to have a meeting with him next week about when is the time to build and what month and all of that stuff.
Yeah, we were making some notes, too, about the things that we want to ask him. And believe me, the things, if you carefully sit down and think about all of the things that are not showing up in your design, then those are definitely things that you should ask your architect about. Because
Exactly.
I would say some of the main things, like I'll give you an example of drainage around the house. Like we have a sloped terrain, right? So we know that there's some water coming down, but it's not a huge concern. But I was like, you can imagine the water coming down the hill and like kind of making a wave or something, or undermining your perimeter wall. So we just talked, I brought that up personally, like, so what's up with how's the water going to go around the property? It's definitely going to hit, some water is going to hit that property coming from, up the hill. What's the plan for that? So I brought that up, and it made this whole discussion about, maybe we should do a retaining type wall that's more like a cement wall, not just a straight up block wall over there. So boom, there's one thing. I feel like, wow, I'm glad I'm thinking about these things. It's okay to bring them up, and then then your architect can respond to that. But you have to be thinking about any crazy thing that you thought. We've been watching YouTube videos, as we always say, YouTube University, about like, construction tips on drainage on sloped terrain. And even there's some folks that you're probably also watching Philippines house building, and what did they do for their drainage. And so all these ideas coming together, and just putting them on the notes application here, just as you think of them when you're throughout the day. And then we have a meeting, and we'll kind of bring some of those things up.
Yep. And yeah, so that's why it took us a while to do the design and very detailed everything that we are been thinking about changing and all of that stuff. Big changes, small changes. I mean, even though we started our design it's beginning of May last year until now. So how long is that now? It's like almost 8 months. It's because we want to be detailed and not having a problem once we start the construction build.
Yeah, we started with these, of course you're concerned about the exterior, and does it have 4 bedrooms, or do you have a powder room and that kind of thing? You start with the big you start narrowing it down lower and lower, and then you get to these things, the smaller things like, okay, well, how does it feel when you're walking down this hallway? Does it feel like it's too constrained? So a lot of this time, we've been spending to avoid having to make decisions during the construction phase, where you get in there and you're like, wow, who designed this hallway to be so thin? kind of thing. So that's why we're doing this over and over and over again. We just think that it would be good. Now, I wanted to mention that as we look forward to starting construction in February or March, we're starting to think about the budget, and it's a little bit weird the way this has gone down, because at the beginning we were saying, here's our budget, we don't want to go over this number, and then the architect was very much first he was explaining that, until we get a final design, we can't get the detailed cost breakdown, right? Because if you have so many cubic yards of concrete, or however they figure that stuff out, so many windows and doors and all that, you can't really make an itemized list. But now we're getting close to construction and we still don't know the exact number. However, the architect is weirdly confident that he can stay within our budget.
Yep.
I don't know why. I don't know how. So he's like, yeah, that's not going to be a problem. No problem at all. And we're like, yeah, but you didn't give us like the detail. He goes, we'll get to the detailed breakdown later, but you should be able to stay in your budget, no problem. So I don't know how other architects handle this, but in my mind, I don't know what's going to show up in that detailed cost breakdown. We do have a little bit of flexibility, of course. But you don't want to get to the point, this is part of my YouTube research, where at the end you're like cheaping out on like the cheapest kitchen sink and the cheapest windows, and because then that's going to have a huge impact on your your living quality when you're there.
Yep.
And you're just saving the last $5,000 in your bank account, and you end up having cheapo windows for 10 or 15 years.
Exactly.
So this is definitely a concern to us, and we haven't gotten the cost breakdown. So comment about what's happened to you in the past. Like, could you say, before the building, gets final approval from the local authorities, we got a cost breakdown, at least it's plus or minus 5%. At least we're getting that close. We haven't even gotten really that. We've gotten higher than we wanted.
Well, yeah. I mean, he did actually give us the total amount of the house built, how much everything. But then, I mean, that time it was the beginning in all of this stuff. But then right now, because we are all detailed design, so we should know like the exact amount. So that's what we are looking to, to hear from the architect, how much exactly the amount of the total of the building. Yeah, I mean, we kind of have the idea already long time ago, but this time we want the real cost.
Right. So he's weirdly confident. We don't really know yet. And so one of these days we're going to get this thing coming in the door. And you can no longer, at this late stage, I was hearing on YouTube that the easiest way is to make like a room smaller or to make your house smaller, and you just save square footage right there, because they always say cost per square foot. So the easiest thing to do is go, my pool is going to be 20% smaller and my living room is going to be 20% smaller. Boom, finished. Well, we're past that point.
Yep, we're past that point now.
Now, when it comes down to what blocks you're going to use to construct how much concrete and all the rest of that stuff, that's really going to be the detailed design. So just FYI, I don't know what other people's experiences are, but we're pretty late in looking at the budget, the detailed budget.
And changing everything. As you know, that when you change now, that this late point of the design, it's going to be expensive and extra charge again for the engineer. Yeah, engineering. So he has to go back to engineering and then redo that redesign again, and then charge you again for the big amount of money. That's why our architect kept telling us, are you sure, Mom, it's only small changes? We were like, yes, it is small changes, not the big one. So he just want to make sure, because once you have those structural change, then that's when they get you.
Yeah, I think they'll go back to the engineers, back to the building department again, and all that sort of thing. So I think we're kind of locked in, and now if it's a little bit more than we thought, I think we're just going to have to bite the bullet and then proceed. And the other thing was the time. So we thought, okay, maybe 6 months, construction time. No, he said 8 months to a year. And if you know anything about construction projects, it usually doesn't come in super early. So usually, we have to add on an additional month. So because we were starting at February or March, targeting at this point, a year or 8 months. That brings us back to Christmas again. We just got through with Christmas.
Christmas.
Recently,
Now we are going to, like, don't tell me that we are going to, past Christmas again. And we don't want to do that because you know what's going to happen when it's Christmas time in Philippines. People don't work and they just, they just take vacation for long. So we don't want to do that, and we are hoping everything will go smoothly about the building, and basically short months, but we don't want to have like either like, it's not sturdy, what kind of building is this, and all of that stuff. Of course, we want like real well built house.
And since I'm a project manager here in the U.S., I'm accustomed to looking at a plan and saying like, okay, what thing could we double up on the people for? So they generally recommended that you don't just throw a bunch of people at a project, because then you have people standing around with nothing to do. But if you say, in this particular thing, let's say, tiling or painting or something, rather than taking, 10 days to paint with 2 painters, you could say, well, let's just put a team of painters on every floor and get this thing done in, 1 week. That's what I'm going to be doing, is when we're going to be looking at the proposals from the construction companies that would be proposing to do it, and just say, well, when do you think you could have it done? And kind of using that as part of the criteria to choose the construction company.
Yeah, and especially when we use when we are actually going to use AEC block. So to us, that's it's better like a short amount of time to build the house, because it's just AEC block. It's not, you don't have to do a lot of like cement hollow blocks and all of that stuff, right?
Yeah. So if you research that on YouTube, and there aren't like rebars put down in between. There isn't a lot of covering up of the really rough concrete hollow block, or CHB. It's like already a really refined product, this AAC block, and it has other good properties as well. It does cost a bit more, but we keep referring to these things that help us go faster. It's kind of like the FedEx charge. So if you want something to go there overnight, you're going to go to the FedEx. You're probably, you could go to other places as well, but the one that's reliably going to, get it there on time. And then, of course, you're not going in there to look for a discount when you go to FedEx, right?
Yeah. And also, we are going to order our AEC block in Manila, because they don't have it in Palawan. So that amount, Black Tech and AEC block, Starkin. So they have a different, like, kind of like a shipping amount of, cost, and then how many days, or the Starkin, it takes like a week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, and then Black Tech, it goes really, really fast. But then the shipping cost, it's pretty expensive. It's like how much it was, like 700. It's 700,000 or 800,000 for shipping cost for all of the AEC block that we are going to use for the house.
And we're still like negotiating. It seems like the architect is getting, every time we see a different estimate, it seems like it's improving.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe because he's negotiating. We're not sure why, but it's getting more affordable.
Yeah. So if you know, guys, that cheaper shipping costs, let us know, because it is pretty expensive. It's almost like 1 million pesos for the shipping cost for the Black Tech, and then the Starkin, AEC block. So let us know, because to us that's pretty expensive, but we don't have any option to use like a cheaper one. So if you go and research concrete hollow block, and the properties of this AAC are far superior, and it's just really just the shipping and the lead time that you have to use in your plan. But we think it's probably worth it just for the speed. If we're really going to cut down, 3 or 4 weeks, even a month of building time, that's just miraculous for us. So we think we'll probably go for it and try to negotiate that price as low as we can, or get some other. There is actually a local office in Puerto Princesa, Palawan, but they don't seem to
it's not like they have it in the back room or
Exactly.
something like that. They don't have it's still like order it through them or something. So it's a little bit complicated, but we think it's worth it you'll see too once you look online at the property.
Yeah, you have to order like ahead of time, like a month before after your structural build and all of that stuff. But
yeah, so the next thing is we're planning for the architectural oversight. So the architect said, oh yeah, now that you have your plans, or when you get your final approved plans, you can just go out and hire a construction company if you want. But we had seen a lot of benefits to having your architect being the oversight person. They're intimately familiar with the plan and what their vision is. And so to have that person come out and be on the job site, aside from even having just a local professional who's involved in the construction business being there, you also have him being kind of totally on your side to check quality, and who knows how much rebar is supposed to be in a structural column. They know. When we got to that structural stuff in our plan, we're like, yep, looks structural to me. Who knows if it's 8 pieces of rebar or 4 pieces of rebar inside of a column of that size.
Yeah, exactly.
So we thought we'll probably, oh, sorry, go ahead, huh?
Oh yeah, and also because we are going to use him for, we planned for design build, right? Is that design build?
We originally planned for design build, which I mistakenly thought that he has a bunch of professionals, but it now sounds like
he
goes out and hires a construction company of his choice.
Yes, and then except if you hire him as in your side, and then he will be looking at the site all the time and checking what's going on and what's happening and all of that stuff. But all the construction team, it's completely different.
Yeah.
So that's how we figured it out.
It looks like that. You can see that there's still these mysteries that you have to like walk really carefully through this process. And you're like, what do you mean? I thought design build was like you have a build team or something.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
No.
So then you have to say, if it's not his build team, then does that mean that you can choose between different builders?
Contractor,
and their reputation, or you look for like, do these guys do they have any funny things on their record, like being sued by previous customers? So,
license.
What are the criteria that we choose the build company, the construction company? So that's something in our minds.
Yeah, and we are going to confirm that with him this meeting next week. Everything, we have to confirm everything. And then what else?
I was just going to say that there really doesn't seem to be an alternative to having the architect. We've heard of people saying like, oh, my cousin is a structural engineer and we just hired him to do the oversight. I still think that there's probably a translation issue between like a total new person who's just looking at the plans and then a construction company looking at the plans, and the architect's totally out of the loop. There seems to be some advantage to us to doing that. And then kind of getting back to what we said about the attorney is that if you don't do it, just think of if you don't do it, what you would do. And it would definitely be a lot more stressful, but we're expecting it to be a bunch of money that we probably don't want to spend, but will probably end up being well spent as long as he's doing what he's supposed to do. And that kind of brings me to the next item, which is the attorney. Back to our attorney, the land guy.
Yep.
So we thought during this design process, the architect he would get busy with another project and he'd be flying somewhere in Palawan and he's there for a couple of days, and here you are, waiting to get some feedback on your swimming pool or something.
Yep.
We've kind of sensed that. We sensed that he just like goes offline for a while, and then when he comes back, he's like, oh, terribly sorry about that. I was in this different part of the country and we're doing this big hotel or something. We're like, okay, that's fine, but we could see that he's making sort of like a value judgments on, well, the hotel is paying me X amount, and maybe the Barry and Aini are paying me X. Maybe I'll just focus on the hotel because they're complaining louder than we are, or some way of dividing his time.
Yep.
So we thought that there's a couple of things why we want to probably involve the attorney. One is when we looked at the old land purchase video, and that was nowhere near the cost of building a house. It's just like a fraction of it, right?
Yep.
And so if you're worried about getting a confusing transaction on a land purchase, you would be also like nervous about wiring, twice or 3 or 4 or 5 times the amount of money to this, perfectly good, probably reliable architect guy. But I mean, it is a ton of money in the Philippines. This kind of money.
And exactly what I was trying to tell you guys, that we don't trust anybody in Philippines.
It's obvious for some people, but if you're trusting people and then you're like, he seems like a nice guy, he's a nice guy.
Even though he thinks that we trusted him,
right?
But he's actually wrong. We don't trust people. So you just have to do like business is business.
Yeah.
Here, this is how it goes.
Right. So there's the money, and then the other part of the bringing in the attorney is I'm expecting to get some kind of a contract from the architect, and he says, okay, I'm going to be your guy for the next year, and it's probably going to say something in there, but we want to say, oh, you must be there a minimum of 1 time per week for a certain amount of time or something like that, because if he starts to out prioritize us for some other project, our quality and our oversight will suffer because of that. And we don't want to be, when you don't have an agreement, it's just like kind of
left behind.
And you're calling up making angry voicemails or something. we don't want to do that. Life's too good to be bothering with that.
Exactly.
So we thought we would, get the attorney to put some stipulations in there, like there's a minimum service and then the expected service, and then if you don't meet the minimum, there's a deduction in the progress payment, just so that he can make a value judgment based on that and say, oh man, I won't be able to I'll be penalized by X amount or X percentage if I don't show up so many times this month to check. So that's the other side of it, is the cost of the attorney, and then there's the quality kind of guarantees, because you have an attorney on your side who's saying something. It's just not us against a bunch of construction professionals. I don't know what the construction company's contract would look like. So all these things together, we thought, we don't want to spend money on an attorney, but I'd rather do that than be just having the architect, nice as he is, saying like, oh yeah, just wiring, I guess $70K over to blah blah blah, and we'll get started.
Where the money goes.
I'm starting to shake thinking about it.
Exactly.
So I don't see how we can't do it. And again, that's how we make some of these decisions on these costs. So you're saying, well, what if we don't do it? Well, it's going to be you praying and hoping that the architect shows up, or praying and hoping that a bunch of heavy equipment shows up to grade your soil after, wiring, X tens of thousands of dollars.
Exactly.
So I think we probably will have to do it, although we haven't talked to our attorney yet.
Yeah, we have. I am probably getting in touch with our attorney soon here. It's because once we get the approval of our building permit.
Yep. Another thing is about quality. So aside from having the architect on our side, we want to be physically near the build site. So we did our renovation in Hawaii. We had to get out of the house. We had nowhere to stay except super expensive Hawaii rentals. So we're like back to the mainland. Yep. So we stayed here in the mainland, and it was very difficult. People can describe or do a screen share with you and say, oh, here's what whatever it looks like. And then you don't really get it. When you arrive, it still doesn't look. You would have definitely made a different decision if you were there walking around in the space. So we have decided we definitely have to be there for that 8 months or 1 year or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. Because once you're not there, you don't really know what it looks like. I mean, it is completely different on a video call or a picture. But then when you get there, you get really surprised how it looks and how you don't like it. So that happened to us in Hawaii. The same with all of that stuff. So we had to redo the stairs and all of that stuff and all the floating shelves and mirror. It's completely different.
Totally different.
Yeah. So don't trust being away from your construction house that being built. You have to be over there.
We promised ourselves. We said never again. So that's our promise. It's coming true right now. So you can get Airbnbs over there. This is super expensive. Not super expensive. Hawaii super expensive, but way more expensive than it should be. But we were lucky to find one that when we said, oh, we're going to be there for a month, 2 months, 3 months, they knew they were going to get consistent income. They were able to drop it a lot. So that's just the approach that we took. We don't want to stay in a hotel. You can't make your own food. It's very expensive. You get tired of eating it to Jollibee or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Or Mang Inasal.
I can't look at another piece of chicken. So yeah, that's what the approach we're taking, is personally being there, and yeah, try to make your own choice on that. But basically, especially in a foreign country, Bang Bansa, the standards are different, the quality is different, everything's different. So it's bad enough here within your own country.
Yeah, how much more in Philippines?
But in the Philippines, yeah, even worse. So.
Yeah. So what else?
Okay, so design. So we are continuing to review our design. So, our approach was, even though the architect was like, okay, stop with the emails. He didn't really say that, but you could tell he's like, that's enough detail. We got it. But
He's getting annoyed.
We don't know if he's really annoyed, but I'll tell you this, he definitely doesn't require you to go over every square thing and check it 10 times. But in our feeling is once the plan is there and it's got all of your 100 different checks on it, and you would be happy living in that space that's reflected on the plan, that's going to go a lot smoother during construction. Just be like, hey man, we thought of it 100 times. Just look at the plan. That's exactly, there's no mistakes, there's no mismeasurements, nothing. Because what we're concerned about is either, as I described before, you kind of get into the space, they've already poured the concrete and you're walking around in your way too thin corridor or something like that, or the steps are like really funny like sizes or something.
Yeah.
We thought we're really gonna have a problem at that point to jackhammer out the something or other. So bad news, right? So we're going into details, as we said before. We're laying things out. We're walking around at our house here and saying, okay, we literally said, you walk up to the door and on your right-hand side is switches. How many switches are there? Is it one switch? Is it one of those ones that has like a combo on it? Does it have dimmers on the switches? Because, in our renovation, you turn some of those lights on, man, it's like you're going to land an airplane or a helicopter on that place. It is way too bright. Exactly. So now we have to go back and add dimmers to stuff because we don't want 150 watts, in the just blasting light. So all these different things, we're laying them out physically. The big things like the deck and the pool, we're laying out rocks in the backyard and physically walking around going, here's the pool, here's the deck. Is there enough space to sit down over here? So
in the hot tub.
Yeah, we're doing this. And then outlets, for example, the original design came in, and then if you can imagine one of those big, typical combination dining room, living room areas, we have a really big room there. And then how do you get the electrical from the wall all the way to the side of your sofa? Well, the answer is going to be a ton of extension cords that are going to be haunting you for the next 50 years. Or, I said, well, how do people do that usually? And then there are these floor outlets, for example, that they can go under the floor, and then they put an outlet. You just kind of lift it up and put your light switch in there for your living room rather than having any cords. So all these little things that you're thinking about watching YouTube videos, walking through in your own house, laying out the actual space, we're going way over what he would expect, but we're the ones that are going to have to accept this product, or we're going to have an angry conversation about jackhammering out the floor and putting more outlets in there. So better to do it now, we say. So just that's what we're doing while we're waiting. We're in waiting mode anyway. What are we doing with all of our time anyway?
Yep.
So we're also working on your finish list. I mentioned that in the prior video. It's really just we're using an Excel spreadsheet, which is the way the renovation construction team gave it to us in the previous project. And every tab is like your room. It's got everything, tile, grout color, fixtures, everything is in there. So that when you have all your manufacturer names, you have all your model numbers and colors and sizes, everything is laid out in there. And so when you flip to that tab and you're like, I know exactly what's in this powder room downstairs. It's this model sink. It's this da-da-da. And so that's part of our planning, is this finish list. So nobody even has to ask what model number on the job site. You're like, here it is, just check the finish list. I also wanted to mention Builder Brigade. That's, I think they're based in the US. They have these cool checklists. You can buy a checklist that goes through every single part of the phase of a residential construction, and it says, if you're doing this, check that. And it's a great checklist, and plus they have a Facebook group, and mostly that's for the typical construction that you see in North America, which has the wooden walls and that kind of thing, which we won't have. But those checklists come in great handy now, and tips and tricks in construction and things that you could consider. So Builder Brigade, give it a shot. As well as custom home building books like custom home building for dummies. So yeah, we're just researching and waiting, basically.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that's all we have to say because our video it's getting longer. We don't want to be like an hour or 45 minutes long. So hopefully you guys won't get tired of our videos. We will update you every month or whatever we have something to say.
Yeah, and we have
to help you guys.
And we have to admit that getting comments, people saying, you know, oh, thanks a lot for the assistance or whatever, that really does motivate us to do even more. So
Yes.
if you like the video, let us know.
Yeah,
and
comment or subscribe.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
We know we're helping somebody out there in cyberspace. We
Yes.
just don't know who.
Well, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you soon.
All right, take care.